good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming out for what we call Congress on Your Corner, in-person town hall. It's a chance to really spend time to talk about what's important to you. I don't have prepared remarks at these normally. I also don't normally have a special guest, but today I have a very fortunate to have someone. And before we jump in, I want to recognize, first let me thank the Village of Zion, the Town of Zion, and the government for letting us use the Village Hall today. Thank you very, very much for that. And I want to recognize some of the people who are here. Mike McDowell, the Police and Fire Commissioner for Zion. Where's Mike?
Right here. Thank you.
Right. Did I see Jerry Nordstrom? We just had breakfast with Mike and Jerry. Jerry's the Vice President of Zion Benton Township High School Board. Christopher Fisher, Commissioner of Public Works and Engineering.
Right back here.
You guys are all hanging in the back. I'm sitting in the palace.
We're letting everybody sit down.
That's service. Thank you. Larry Booth, Benton Township Supervisor, also in the back. And Larry Wickets, also in the back. Zion Township. Did I miss any other elected officials? All right. And as others come in, I will welcome them. And there are a couple of open seats up here if you want to come in and sit down. And seats on the side. And while we're having people come sit down, I'll introduce my team who is here. Greg Kloss is my Deputy District Director, helping make sure this happens. Jake Kaplan against the wall, taking pictures. Sarah Shania is in the back. And we have another Sarah, an intern, who's with us today as well. Chance for a commercial. Anytime you have any issues with any federal agencies, it could be Social Security, Medicare, it could be the VA, you have a question, please reach out to our office. We're here to help you. And I have a wonderful team that will do everything we can to make sure we take care of any issue you might have. And the same is true for the Senator. Why don't I turn it over to the Senator and say a few remarks, and then we can jump in for questions.
Sure. Thanks, Brad. It's great to be in Zion. I've done town meetings 3 straight Saturdays. The first one was in Havana, Illinois, home of the Havana Ducks. And then last Saturday was in Hillsboro with the Hillsboro Hilltoppers. So now I'm with the ZBs. Is that right? Got it. Well, this is covering the state from one end to the other. Happy to do it. Let me tell you a story that has nothing to do with anything. A few months ago, I went down to Nashville, Tennessee. Anybody been down there? It's a lot of fun to go down there. And there was the Grand Ole Opry at the Ryman, and I went to a show there, and there was this fellow who was a country and western singer named Bobby Bayer. If you're a country and western fan, you might recognize that name. He's been around a long, long time. So Bobby's probably 90 years old, and he wears this big old black cowboy hat. He's got the guitar. And he leans into the microphone and he said, I guess you all probably noticed that I'm wearing a hearing aid. He said, I want to tell you how I decided to get that hearing aid. He said it was my wedding anniversary. And my wife came up to me and said, I'm proud of you. And I said to her, and I'm getting tired of you too. He said, that's when I decided it was time to get a hearing aid. I like these town meetings. We all don't agree on everything, but thank God we live in a country where we can meet like this freely, express ourselves, and realize that the Constitution and the history of this country protects us. We have so many issues. I want to touch on the ones that are most important to you. The one I've been working the hardest on in the last couple of weeks is the price of prescription drugs. And I want to tell you why. It's something that most Americans say worries them. Some people have insurance to take care of it. Some don't have enough insurance to take care of it. They got co-pays or they have to pay out of pocket. And the one that just bothered me the most was insulin. Insulin discovered 100 years ago in Toronto, Canada, and the researchers that discovered it got the Nobel Prize and turned around and took all the legal rights to the future profits of insulin, gave them away right on the spot 100 years ago. Gave them away for $1. And now what are we faced with today? We're faced with insulin, this drug that's been around for 100 years, dramatically increasing in price. Eli Lilly puts out a product called Humalog. It's one of the most popular forms of insulin. When they first put this on the market 20 years ago, it cost $29 for a dosage of Humalog. As of last week, it was up to $329. So you're thinking to yourself, now this has been around a long time, and it isn't the cost of research that we're paying for. They raised the price 35 times in 20 years, 35 times. And then they announced, well, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to create a generic form of this Humalog and bring the price down to $140 a dose. Well, I told them before I was going to send them flowers in gratitude for their generosity. I was going to note the fact that exactly the same product made by the same company sells for $38 in Canada. 140 here, 38 in Canada. Give me a break. People are unfortunately reaching a point where they're rationing their insulin, and people can die when they make that decision. When it comes to life and death drugs, they've been around for a long time. There are no excuses. Who knows the most heavily advertised drug in America today? The one you see on television the most? Humira. Give that lady a dose of Humira. How much does Humira cost a month? $5,000. So if you have psoriatic arthritis and you can't move, you think this is a terrible price, but I'll pay it. If you have the little patch of red skin on your elbow for psoriasis, $5,000 a month, are you kidding me? Well, we wonder why the cost of healthcare keeps going up. Blue Cross Blue Shield says it's the cost of prescription drugs that's driving up the cost of our health insurance. They pay more, Blue Cross Blue Shield, for prescription drugs in Illinois than they pay for inpatient hospital care. All the inpatient care, people going in for surgeries and treatments and all the rest of it, they pay more for prescription drugs. The good news is, the gentleman back there with the Make America Great Again hat says we ought to do things together. The good thing is we can do this one together. President Trump came out for this, said let's do something about prescription drug prices. And there's no reason why we can't, as both political parties, get together with the president and find a way to bring these prices under control so that people can afford them. So that's why I want to open with it. It's something I've been working on in the last few months, and I'm sure Brad has got some opinions on the subject too, and I'll let him recover his town meeting.
Thank you, Senator, and I will follow up on that because this started my third term. I was very fortunate. I requested when I first got to Congress in 2013, I made the request that I would ultimately like to get on the Ways and Means Committee. This term I was able to get a seat on the Ways and Means Committee. I'm on the Health Subcommittee, and this week we had a hearing on prescription drugs. And at every hearing you get 5 minutes to talk about an issue. I chose to talk about insulin, that exact issue, because of the very same reasons that the Senator was discussing. 100-year-old drug, and most people are rationing. These aren't exceptional stories, they are routine stories of people being forced to ration their insulin. The stories of woman who turns off her pump when she goes to sleep at night hoping she'll wake up because she just is trying to save a little bit of money. Someone's son who actually died because he wasn't taking his insulin. We need to make sure that people can afford their medicines. The push we're talking about, technology is the way we're going to cure diseases, develop new treatments, but if you can't access that technology, it doesn't do any of us any good. So that is a key issue. And before we go to questions, I'll do one last thing because I know it's important to the folks here. A quick update on the Stranded Act. We introduced this bill last year. I'm pleased to say that a piece of it, trying to just collect the data on what resources are available, was passed in the fall. We were able to add that as an amendment to a piece of legislation that ultimately was passed and signed into law. We are working on developing and building out the support, so we will introduce the Stranded Act later this year. It will continue. We are continuing to do everything we can to make sure communities like Zion, we are at the cutting edge on this issue of communities with decommissioned nuclear plants stranded with spent nuclear fuel. We need to make sure that until we find a place for the fuel to go, that you guys aren't left holding the bag, and we're doing everything we can on that. So with that, thank you. A lot of familiar faces, some new faces. Let me just open it up, please.
Good morning. We can use the mic just because there's people in all parts of the room.
My name's Stan from Lake County. I am one of your constituents. You tell us we're working for us. I hope you are. I'd like to see it out loud because we're not seeing it, folks. And it's not just Mr. Trump. When the speaker points her finger and says, no way, forget it. Couple things. I have my notes. A little tough here. I was a teacher for 35 years. A little tougher in front of a crowd.
It's a friendly crowd, I promise.
It is. Well, unlike college campuses, conservatives aren't allowed to talk. We get screamed down, unfortunately. One, English is second first language, should be our first language in this country. It would save millions of dollars. Voting ballots, elections, people come to this country, our parents did, our grandparents did. My neighbors are Hispanic, they're speaking, he's got a business, houses, living a dream. English should be our first language. I have two other points.
Okay.
If you study history, civilizations, strong military we have, one of the best. Arts, sciences, a central government, which is in disarray in my opinion, because we haven't worked together for many years, not just now. And a language. When those things falter, civilizations falter. And I'm worried about that for my grandkids. And language is one of the first things. Number two, you talked several months back, I was at one of your meetings. Lake County used to be the hubbub, and the LG folks that live in Waukegan, North Chicago, the hub of industry and diversity. Waukegan, North Chicago, Puerto Rican Society, Rufus Miller Lodge, Polish home, Lithuanian home, business, industry, it's gone. The Democrats have been in power for how many years in Lake County? In Illinois, it's not back. Why? It's gone to other states. What have you done? Three. Oh, I have one more. I said English, industry. So, can you work with people? And I got to admit, our economy's better now. And yes, President Obama had something to do with it. Yes, he did. I give him credit. But it's better a heck of a lot now than it's been. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll start. And maybe I'm going. So I say this pretty much at every town hall. I run as a Democrat. I run on my values. I run on my principles. I represent everyone in the district. Democrats, Republicans, those who voted for me, those who voted against me, and hardest of all, those who don't vote. That's our responsibilities as representatives. And I have said as a candidate, I say as a elected official, the only way we're going to address our challenges is by working together, is by reaching across the aisle and finding ways that we can find common ground. And I'm willing to work with everyone who comes to the table with an open mind, ideas, and that commitment to join together to address our problems. So that's a philosophical statement of how do we get things done. As far as language, on one hand, I agree with you. We need to make sure that all of our students are learning the skills to read, write, communicate effectively. Because I talk to young people, I said, what do I have to do to succeed? If you can communicate your ideas, if you can put them into writing, there's nothing you can't do. You can be a teacher, you can go into law, you can go into politics, you can go into product design, but we have to be able to communicate. But I also celebrate the diversity. I'm proud that my kids have studied other languages. I'm proud that you can go around communities in the Chicago area. We are the largest population outside the capital cities of Poland, of Czechoslovakia. We have a large, diverse community here in Chicago, and I think that makes us a stronger region, and as a country, it makes us a stronger country. So I believe we can do both. As far as having a strong military, and I say this as the father of a young Navy officer, I, every day, honor the men and women who put on a uniform, who go to places far and wide, oftentimes into harm's way, to keep our nation safe. We need to do everything we can to protect them and give them the resources to accomplish their mission. And here is the home of the only federal VA DOD hospital, level federal healthcare center. We need to make sure that when our veterans come home, when they leave the military, we give them the resources they need, because that's what makes for a strong nation. As far as industry, Lake County actually is growing. We can always do better. I don't think it's a matter of partisan politics. It's a matter of investing in infrastructure. It's a matter of educating our young people so we can invent things here, make them here, and with the infrastructure, ship them around the world. We had a hearing on Thursday. I made that speech about doing that. We can accomplish our goals. We can overcome our obstacles if we work together. So I suspect we don't agree on everything. I suspect we probably agree on more than we disagree. And that's why I have to do it, so thank you. Sarah, if you want to touch on that?
I'll mention a couple things. My mother was an immigrant to this country. She was brought here at the age of 2 from Lithuania. And her mother, my grandmother, whom I never met, brought her and my aunt and uncle on a boat. They landed in Baltimore, and it turned out the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad had 2 destination cities. One was Chicago and the other St. Louis. So the Lithuanians had to pick. And most of them headed for Chicago, but my family headed to the land of opportunity, East St. Louis, Illinois, which is where we settled. My grandmother did not speak English. My mother spoke English and Lithuanian. My mother made sure that I just spoke English. That's my story. That's my family story. That's America's story. We see this evolution of languages as people come to this country. To become a citizen of this country, you need to take a test. It is absolutely easy. It is to take a test to determine English proficiency. Now, I understand, I think we all do, success in this country is based on knowledge of English. If you don't have it, you're limited in where you can go and what you can do. And younger generations understand that completely. That's why most of them are learning English as fast as they can, even though mom and grandmother didn't. The second thing I mentioned to you on industrial jobs and manufacturing jobs. That world has changed a lot since Evan Rood and others were in business here. And we've got to change with it. So what we created was a digital manufacturing operation in Chicago, sponsored by the Department of Defense, I might add, to find the best ways to build things in the future, products that will serve us in years to come.
Yeah,
and make sure that
get back in this area.
well, let me tell you, there are companies, the companies that come and use this facility are not just from Chicago, they're from all over the state. No, my point is this. My point is this. My point is this. This kind of digital manufacturing is the future. Here's something you're going to find where there is manufacturing. There are jobs that are unfilled in manufacturing facilities. Why? Because many parents, when their kids say, I've got an opportunity to go to a job to work at this factory, they'll say, not you. Your dad worked in the factory, not you. The factories of today look a lot different than Dad's factory. And for example, the largest production facility for Kraft Foods is in Champaign, Illinois. Mac and cheese. We all know that. It's a huge facility. It's the biggest one in this country. They cannot hire enough industrial engineers. These are not college degrees. Industrial engineers. Starting pay $60,000 a year. People are retiring, they can't fill the jobs. These are good paying jobs that people can do well by. And we have to start saying to the businesses, open your doors and let the young people come inside and see what a factory looks like these days. That factory that makes mac and cheese is a loud factory because they don't mind money, but it's clean as a whistle from one end to the other. So we've got to get people more acclimated to what manufacturing jobs look like today. We've got to get thoughtful investors in manufacturing to look at the technology that's going to serve us in the century.
You have the baby, so I'm going to give you the next question.
Oh, okay.
Wow. Greg, you want a new question, but we'll start with the.
I won't be that long.
Girl, you got a handful.
I got my other one back there, too.
And my request of everybody is please make it a question.
No, I got it. That sounded like okay.
She's looking.
Yeah, she is. She's 7 months old. Hi, my name is Jennifer. I'm from Lake County. I am in your district. As you can see, I'm a mother, but I'm not just speaking for her. I'm also speaking for myself and for you. I learned recently that the Health and Human Services, there was a lawsuit that ruled that there have been no vaccine safety studies for 32 years. And I'm a little concerned about that. The case was already done, like that was proved in court. And I'm just really concerned about that. And because our kids are getting sicker, the childhood cancer is getting high, the seizures and the ear infections they're just getting really, really sick. So then I learned recently that in 1986, there was a National Vaccine Act that says that you cannot sue the vaccine manufacturer at all. That $4 billion have been paid out for vaccine injuries. 99% of injuries goes unpaid, and our tax dollars pay for these injuries, $4 billion. So I learned that on March 5th, just a couple days ago, that there was a Senate hearing, the Health Committee, to discuss vaccines and encourage it amongst adults to make it mandatory, which would make it like the flu vaccine mandatory, which would then go to HPV vaccine, making it mandatory until age 65. And then I guess I just heard that they approved the anthrax vaccine. So I'm just questioning, like, I just want to make sure that, I'm asking you to make sure the safety studies are being done. And if you could just, like, I don't want anything mandatory for my body, my choice, my kid's body. I want it to be just between a doctor and myself. Thank you.
Great. Senator, I don't know if you were aware of the hearing in the Senate. I wasn't.
Well, the problem we have is that a number of parents have decided to opt out of vaccinations. And so things that we thought had gone away, like measles, are coming back. And they're coming back in large numbers because there are unguarded people in the situation. Some are skeptical about the safety of vaccines. I'm not. My kids are vaccinated, my grandkids are vaccinated. I believe it's a smart thing to do, and after you've tried it millions and millions and millions of times, you can really have a very convincing study about the safety of the vaccine itself, what it comes down to. Now, interesting point you made about the liability, and here's what we ran into. And I used to be a trial lawyer, okay? I used to sue people in courts over issues like medical malpractice. And so in this case, the people who made the vaccines said, you know, the cost per dose for these vaccines is maybe low in most cases, but there's so many of them that are being given out that we don't want the exposure of lawsuits if there are problems. I disagree with that. I really believe if there's something wrong with the product that you're selling, you should be held responsible for it. But I lost. The people that prevailed were the vaccine manufacturers who said they should be protected from liability in this circumstance.
And we haven't had the hearings on that House side, but obviously
And that should be sad, like, you know,
Yep.
respect
So
for that.
we took the microphone out of your hands. We'll come back to you.
And now,
I'm gonna try and project. Thank you for being here today. My name is Nivedita Khatkar, and I'm a district resident. And besides being a wife and a mother, I'm an industrial organizational psychologist, which is a specialized profession for the betterment of employees. And I want to first of all thank you, Congressman, for co-sponsoring the bill for fairness for high-skilled immigrants. I really appreciate that. It's a Zoe Lofgren Kamala Harris bill. And a lot of constituents in the district, as well as all over the country, are suffering in this backlog, 70-plus year backlog for green cards, because we are from a specific country, because of the fact that we were born in a specific country. And I also want to say that your staffers like Tommy and Megan and Sarah who's out there, they're all amazing.
Thank you.
So Senator Durbin, to you, what I want to say is we're in a time where a lot of people disagree on a lot of things that
I noticed.
you know that. But what we thought was being a Republican, being a Democrat, basically means that circumstances of your birth, where you were born, should not matter in how far you can go in life. But there's still one law, like I was saying earlier, that defines the rules based on the country of birth, and that's our employment-based green card law. And when people don't co-sponsor the bill that we have in place that will fix this issue for us, that is really hurtful. It's really offensive to us. What we hear them saying is that you only are a part of a country. You don't matter as an individual. You're just based on where you were born. That's what you mean to us. That's what we hear. And because of this green card backlog that we are in, my child was born in this country. She is a citizen. She's 6 years old, just like these kids here. we might have to uproot our entire family and move to a country, back to India, which she has no ties with. It wouldn't have been the case if we were not a community in backlog, waiting for our green card for the rest of our lives. And this, I feel, is incredibly racist, and it should not be allowed, especially in these times. So this is why I'm asking you for your leadership, your co-sponsorship of this bill, just as the Congressman has done on the House side of the bill. Senator Duckworth has co-sponsored this bill already, and that's my ask.
Okay. I'll try. Does this work? No. Okay, let me, I don't know the specific bill that you talked about, but I will look at it. And let me try to explain a little bit of the background on this. There was a time when we favored certain nations sending people to the United States. And of course started with the European nations where most of us claim our roots. And then over the years we actually excluded certain people, Chinese for example, for long periods of time. So if you talk about prejudice or race being used, it was. And what we tried to do was to come up with quotas from countries that could come to the United States. The net result is that some countries, Philippines for example, the wait is 20 years. The wait is 20 years to get to the United States, to even be reunified with their families. So it really, you look at it, whether it's India, Philippines, whatever, you say,
China, Mexico.
it is not a fair apportionment of people coming into this country. This point I want to make, I'm proud of being the son of an immigrant mother. Her naturalization certificate is on the credenza behind my desk, just to remind everybody who walks through the door, I'm first generation and proud of it, and proud of what immigration has brought to this country. I do believe that we cannot accept everyone who wants to come here. There is a limit to how many people can come through the door, and we've got to do it in a sensible way. We don't want anyone dangerous that we know coming into our country, number one. And number two, we try to make sure that people who do arrive can take care of themselves. They don't show up looking for some sort of help, from the government. When you talk about folks from India, I'm reminded of a bill that I worked on for 6 months with John McCain and with a number of Republican leaders. It was the Gang of Eight, we called ourselves, 8 senators, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, comprehensive immigration reform bill. One of the provisions in that bill said the following: if you come to college in the United States and you get a graduate degree in one of the STEM subjects, science, technology, engineering, math, you get a graduate degree in one of those subjects and you have a job offered to you, we give you a green card. We want to use your education to build this country. You've gone to our best schools. We need you. We need you to be part of the future of our country. So when it comes to green cards, I think we ought to be eyes wide open. Which people coming in are no threat to us? Which people coming in will help build our family structure in this country? Which people coming in will help build the economy of this country? Take a look at Silicon Valley and how many people there are leading CEOs and immigrants to this country. Thank goodness. I'm glad they came. We need them, and they've created great jobs and great opportunities. So I didn't get into H-1Bs. I didn't know if that's what you wanted to talk about.
It's not about H-1Bs. We have approved resident petitions. It's because of the
Quotas.
The per country quotas.
Okay. I'll look at the bill.
Yeah.
And you say it's Kamala Harris in the Senate?
It's Kamala Harris bill on the Senate side.
Okay. So
Yeah. I will meet with the
okay.
In the back, yeah.
Just project.
Talk about that, and let me, you can just have, please, questions, because you can, so we get more questions. Yeah.
Really just a short question. I'm from the area, well, you guys are representatives of mine, I'm in your district and obviously your state. I'm from originally Detroit, Michigan. My mom's black, my dad's white. I'm married to a woman from Mexico, very diverse family. I have 3 children. And my biggest thing as a father is protecting them. Now, I believe safety all the way around is important. I'm a very strong supporter of the Second Amendment because I'm a very strong supporter of my family and protecting them. In light of recent events, I do understand, yes, safety is a big deal. We need to make sure our schools are safe. We need to make sure our communities are safe. But I don't think that we need to blow out of proportion with risk. I look at it like I could have died in a car accident on my way up here sooner than I would have been shot. I think my question is, I want to understand, why do you guys think we need to ban certain types of firearms instead of just addressing the root cause of how these people are getting them? I had this planned out, but
I understand.
where you guys come
Yeah,
from.
no, and I appreciate it, and thank you for asking the question. And it's not banning instead of. Right? We need to have gun safety, and I appreciate it. I've said this many times. Many of you in this room have heard me say, I support the Second Amendment. I support the right. Hello again. The average, just move back to the question. The average law-abiding gun owner, if everyone was the average law-abiding gun owner, we wouldn't have these problems. Right? But we need to make sure that people who shouldn't have guns have a harder time getting guns, and that's why I support background checks. And universal background checks, otherwise everyone's going to look for a loophole. Does that solve the problem completely? Of course not. Nothing we do is going to solve the problem completely, but let's take steps, so I don't want to stand in the way. Now, I also talk about this tradition in our country, long tradition of parents, grandparents taking their kids hunting or to a shooting range and teaching them lessons of responsibility, independence, safety. That's not where our problem is. I support that, and I will promote that. It's the idea that I establish my manhood by shooting somebody, or that someone with a mental health issue. 2/3 of the gun deaths in this country are suicides. How do we help reduce that number? Again, we can't eliminate it completely, but we can take steps to reduce it. And this is one of the areas where I think we talked about reaching across the aisle or working together. We can all work together on this. The idea of people keeping their guns safely in their home and having the training, that's a good idea that we both support. Some of the most tragic stories we read in the paper is where a child finds their parent's gun, takes it to the neighbor's house, and the child of the neighbor's child is wounded or God forbid, killed. But those stories happen literally every single day. So these are just things to try to make it safer. And trying to make our schools safer, our communities safer, we all, I think, can work towards that. I will fight and protect your right to possess a weapon, but I also want to make sure that you're safe and your neighbor's safe and the rest of the community is safe. And that's really where we're going to. To your question of types of guns, I can't think of a reason why anyone needs these large capacity magazines.
I can give you one.
Okay?
So, my son was born in 2016 in September. December of that same year, I go to work. I work in Schaumburg,
Okay.
30 miles from Milwaukee, every day, on Monday. In December, second week of December, while I was at work, 2 doors down from mine, 4 men kicked the door in. And all I could think of was, what if they were 2 doors the other direction?
I hear you.
A month after that, I went and bought a Glock. 17 rounds, and the reason I bought it was because it had ammo capacity. 10 rounds is not going to get you through a gunfight with 4 people if it turns into that. If they don't bolt after the first shot, what's my wife going to do after she's out of ammo?
I hear you. Now we're having a discussion of the size. And the one I go to is the famous Aurora shooting, not the recent one here, but Aurora, Colorado, with the Batman movie. My sister's there. Had my son been there, he would have gone to that theater for that movie. So it hits very close to home. That shooter fired off 70 rounds in less than a minute. Right? To be able to do that and then be out the door at the theater before first responders ever had a chance to get there. So there is a balance. So I'm not going to be absolute in any of my definitions. I'm absolute in my goal to make our community safer. How do we do that? But then let's have the conversation of what is a reasonable compromise in numbers. And I think that's the way we should do all legislation. I don't know if you want to touch on this as well.
I'll make it quick and I'll make it local. In the last 3 weeks, what have we seen? In the last 3 weeks, what have we seen? In Aurora, Illinois, 5 policemen shot, 5 individuals killed at Pratt Manufacturing. And then 2 days ago, Rockford, a policeman killed there as well. So you have 6 policemen shot, 1 killed.
We have one in McHenry.
one in McHenry. And if you take a look at the ones in Aurora and Rockford, there's one common element. Neither one of those individuals should have had possession of a firearm. Under the laws of the United States of America, they were convicted felons. You're not supposed to have a firearm if you're a convicted felon. What happened? The system is not tight enough. There are loopholes in the system. There's gun show loopholes in the system. If we're serious to make sure that you, as a law-abiding citizen, can have your rights under the Second Amendment, you got to join us in making the law real when it comes to keeping the guns out of the hands of convicted felons and people who are mentally unstable. I mean, that I think is not an unreasonable thing to I agree with Congressman Schneider. Excuse me, there'll come a time you can ask your question. I agree with Congressman Schneider when it comes to these high-capacity clips. How about those people sitting at that Las Vegas concert?
Yeah, and that guy
Country and Wisdom.
in Chicago.
There he was with this huge magazine and bump stocks that made automatic weapons out of what is prohibited by law to be an automatic weapon. And that, to me, is going back to the days of machine guns. Remember, we got rid of those under Al Capone. Now we're back to the new machine guns, and people are fighting us on this issue. It just doesn't make sense from what I'm seeing.
Right in the red. Microphone's broken, so I need you to project.
What's your worldview in regard to making the decisions that you make?
Any decisions in particular, or just in general?
Go down on, but I mean, murder of baby in the wombs, and even when they're alive.
Okay.
LBG, same-sex marriage.
Okay.
God removed from the marketplace and put on a plantation. Freedom of sodomy over freedom of speech.
I didn't get a sense.
Where do you come
All right.
from?
I'll share my worldview, and I appreciate the question. As the senator, I'm a grandchild of immigrants. My family comes from Eastern Europe, Jewish immigrants, flood pogroms. In my office, I have a picture of my great-grandparents and my grandmother and her siblings, and the experience that this great country gave to them. What this country gave was the opportunity to be whoever they chose to be. They came from Europe, they made it across to England. The most fascinating or ooh-ah part of the story is they were supposed to be on the Titanic, and my great-uncle got sick, so they waited a week. Otherwise, this would be a very short answer. And they made their way to Hunt to Colorado, small little town in Colorado, where they achieved their dreams. Why? Because what this country has been built on are two basic concepts. One is the sense of endless opportunity. From the westward movement to the Industrial Revolution, the Tech Revolution, and where we are now trying to tackle climate and the things that this country provides, anyone can achieve anything they set their minds to. And the second part, I'll make it around question, so I'll get to people, is that we have boundless human potential. And that boundlessness is defined in the freedom of spirit and the freedom of belief and the freedom to choose. And that's what defines this country, and that's what's going to allow us to go and continue the greatness that this country has offered previous generations. I believe 100% in a woman's right to make her own choice about her own health care, within the privacy of the conversations with her own family and her doctor. And that's simply where I come down. I believe in people having the right to choose to pray to the God they believe in, the faith they have. And I'll defend people's rights who say, I have no faith, I believe in no God. That's what defines and makes this country. I believe in the right for people to make the choices. All right? So I will tell you, no one is making that choice of birth. That just doesn't exist. They really aren't. That's not the way it's been characterized. The fact of the matter, I will make it, please, okay, between us. So I believe in that right. And I believe it also gets into right of the freedom of religion. Because again, in the Jewish faith, just as an example, if there is a choice to be made between saving the life of the mother or the life of the fetus, Jewish law says save the mother. because they define the fetus as a pursuer. And in the same way, if I saw someone out on the street chasing someone with a knife, Jewish law says you defend the one being chased. That's their interpretation. That's a religious interpretation. Others have a different. Catholic believe life starts at conception. I don't believe the state has the right to get in between those decisions of faith. Right? And that's and that's why I believe it should be a private decision between the woman and her family. So that's my worldview. My other worldview is that I think if we look at the challenges we face as a world, climate change, human trafficking, we pick commerce, trade, the United States has proven an indispensable nation in leading the world. And the challenges we face, we can't solve alone. We need to work together in the world, and the world's looking at the United States. And my concern at the moment is we're in retreat in that leadership role. We need to, based on our values, be more engaged. So that's the other worldview that I bring to what I do. So thank you. You got your hand up in the corner.
Yeah, I do. My mom is right here. She's got her hand up too. And we wanted to touch about veterans benefits. The reason why my parents, because my dad had dementia and Parkinson's, COPD, several things, he was unaware of the benefit of the property tax. They've been paying the exemption, they've been paying all these years. I found out because I'm a veteran, and one of my friends filled me in on when her husband died. I tried for over a year to get the benefit for her because my dad had to be put in a nursing home.
The same year the law was enacted, 2015.
Lake County screwed around so much. They kept saying, well, he doesn't live in the state. Well, 30 minutes away was the closest nursing home to my mom. And the fact that we put him there was so that he could be closer. He paid Illinois taxes, and he paid his mortgage, and he filed his taxes with Illinois. It didn't matter to them. They still screwed around. In September, my dad passed away.
I'm sorry.
My mom is now on a reduced income, and she's paying the property taxes in Zion, which are ridiculous. And I am trying to figure out how to help her for the Homestead Act. We filed that. Then they said it was a different form that has to be filled out. She's been going through so much since September, between the health insurance screwing around with the government, between the property taxes. And I know that you've been working, both of you, on the veterans' property tax. How long is this going to go on for? And are they going to back pay any of what they kept that they took from my parents?
Well, first, let me say I'm sorry for your loss and the struggles you're going through.
Well, let me preface too, he was 100% disabled.
Mm-hmm.
He lived in Union Grove, Wisconsin at the Veterans Home. He went in the same year the law was enacted. 2 years later, when I knew about it, I filled in the paperwork. They said he had to live in the residence, and having filed the paperwork for 1 year, we've lived in the house for 27. He had to live in the house. If we were to get the property tax exemption, he could move back home with me,
Right.
and I could take care of him for a year and fill out the paperwork, and then he could go back.
Have you reached out to anyone in my office yet?
Yes.
I have reached out to your office, yes.
And we've been working with you.
No.
Who are you talking to?
Hire somebody, right?
Who are you talking to in the office?
The congressperson, there's a female, she said she'd get back to us.
Who in the office? I can't promise you the outcome, but I promise you every day we work on cases and we do the best that we can.
I was told that they're working on the law now for widows who are still in the same home.
This may be a state issue. Property tax is a state issue, and if we cannot help you, we can direct you to the right person. But my suggestion is, and I'm happy to talk to you afterwards or have someone on my team, we can help point you in the right direction. Again, I can't promise the outcome, but I can promise we will do everything we can to try to get to a resolution.
Can I say one thing too? And this did not apply. I'm sorry for your loss. Didn't apply in your circumstance. But we created 4 or 5 years ago a bill I introduced called the Caregivers Program under the Veterans Administration. So if you have a disabled veteran who wants to stay home, rather than to go to a facility. We say if you have a spouse or a member of the family who will take care of you, we'll help them. We'll give them nurse medical training so they can take care of the disabled vet. We'll give them 2 weeks respite a year, saying we'll bring in a visiting nurse so you can have a vacation on your own.
And we were not aware of that.
I wish you were, and if it would have applied. The third thing is, if you're in an economic hardship, we don't pay a lot of money. It's $2,500 a month. For some people, that's all they need. So that the person they love, the husband, the father, can stay home instead of being institutionalized. And I don't say that in a negative way. Sometimes that's the best thing.
Yeah.
But it's a very expensive undertaking when a person moves into a nursing home or something like that. So the Caregivers Program has over 20,000 disabled vets that are helped by this. And I'm sorry you didn't know about it. It might have helped you.
Yeah, I promised this young man here, I make a promise to young people, if they come, they get to ask a question. So you came, you get to ask a question.
All right. So, Congressman and Senator, it's an honor to meet y'all. My name is Julian, and I'm a junior in high school. Not the only here, I'm from Thomas and other people like that. And not voting age yet, but I will be come later this year. And the one thing is, high school is coming close to an end for me. Now, I have good grades, and I'm pretty confident that I will be able to score scholarships. The one thing that gets to me, and the one thing that crosses my mind frequently is college. And student debt in this country, as he just said, it's awful. I think a while ago I read that it exceeded credit card debt before. All right? And then I also want to touch on this bigger issue. It relates to that. The cost of living in this country is going up. Income equality is also going up. And kind folks like us over here are being neglected. And I personally feel, maybe others in this room do, is that this current government is favoring rich interests over us. Especially, for example, with this new Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which for many of us, we were deceived by just, we got a little bit more income, but our refunds, such as it could be with my family, are decreasing. And I've heard stories of people who've gotten refunds before are now suddenly having to owe thousands of dollars in taxes. And I read somewhere where I think student loan deductions got away.
So let me talk on taxes first, and student loan, and the center as well. On the tax bill, I opposed the tax bill for the exact reasons you talked about. It did not. I think we need tax reform. I'm proud to be working now on the Ways and Means Committee where that will ultimately happen. But the principles of taxation in this country, it should be fair. You talk about income inequality. Those who have more should carry more of the burden. It should be. It should not add to our debt. We've already put on your generation $22 trillion of debt, and that's growing. We need to be more responsible. It should grow our economy. And it shouldn't be built or presented with accounting gimmicks. And the 2017 bill violated all four of those principles. In particular, it penalized states like Illinois with the caps on the state and local tax deduction. So there's double taxation on states like ours. I hope we can fix and repeal that. And they're signed under legislation that would do that just this past week. It puts a burden on working families, while giving extraordinary tax cuts to the wealthiest and to the corporations, further and more than they even were asking for. So it was bad policy. As far as it goes to deceived, I don't think so. They were pretty open, and I'm saying this somewhat tongue-in-cheek. They told us exactly what they were doing, right? And they promised it would be good for everyone, but there was always that wink, and that's what we were saying. This is not the tax reform that we need, and it still is not the tax reform that we need. We need tax reform that's going to make it easier for working families, for someone starting a career, and this will be my transition to the student loan, to build that career and have the middle-class life that we all aspire to, which is a home, a family, health care, education for our kids, and the ability to have and prepare for a secure and dignified retirement after we finish our working careers. That's what all of us are aspiring to, and everyone should have the opportunity to achieve. So that's a key thing. And education, obviously, is an important part of that. Senator Durbin talked about manufacturing. We have so many manufacturing jobs out there that are going unfilled. There are a lot of opportunities for people to go and work in an apprenticeship, a lot of paths to get to those skills. It doesn't necessarily have to be a university degree, but for many people it is. And for many people and their families, that degree is getting increasingly out of reach. Right? They look at the cost of that, they're graduating. I had students in my office each of the past 3 weeks talking about that same issue. Some were med students, some were undergraduate students, some were people aspiring to go off to college. I believe we need to get to a place where someone who wants to go get that university degree, a 4-year college degree, if they're willing to work part-time, and by part-time I mean no more than 10 hours a week during the school year over the summers, they get financial aid, scholarships, and hopefully they don't have to take debt, but if they do take debt, they take a debt no more than what they can afford to pay off in 10 years so they can start their life. That's the structure we have to get back to. But you touched on it. Today, student loan debt exceeds credit card debt. And there was a recent story of these private schools, and I'll let the senator talk about, where they're sucking students in, loading them up with debt, and there was a major collapse just this week of a private college that these students were really bad. We have to stop those abuses. So there's a number of pieces trying to bring the cost of college down. We have to work with states and give them the ability to invest more in education so that less burden is falling onto tuition, the students bearing tuition. And we've got to work on making debt easier to pay back by going into fields and communities that have great needs. So, broad answer.
Let me add, over pancakes, where I met you this morning, Julian, over pancakes I sat next to the superintendent of the Zion Benton School. Her name, Chris Clare, and this gentleman here who is in charge of community health care clinics in the area. And an interesting thing they told me. They said, we can't find enough teachers. We don't have enough teachers for our high school. We have 3 vacancies now and we can't fill them. We need more teachers. And I talked to this gentleman here about the situation at the clinics. They need more psychologists, psychiatrists, social workers to deal with addiction and that sort of. There's a clear need here. Go back to the lady before with the veteran husband. We have a need for caregivers at almost every stage in life. Daycare. Ask a working mom and dad what their first concern is. Who's going to take care of our kids during the course of the day? Now go to the disability community and ask them what kind of personal help do they have. They usually don't need it around the clock, but to get dressed and get ready and go to work and be there when they come home in the evening. Now the veterans that we talked about, and then talk about the obvious thing, the aging of America. More and more of us are going to see parents and grandparents who are going to need help not just for 10 years, but for 20 years and more. Where are all these caregivers coming from? Where are the people to work in the clinic coming from? Where are the teachers coming from? And it comes down to your question. We need to create financial incentives for you to consider those 3 opportunities in your life. Loan forgiveness for you if you will come and teach at a public high school. Loan forgiveness if you're willing to come work after you have a degree in one of the medical professions in one of our clinics in the community. Those are the things that make us a richer country, don't they? So that we help families that are trying to work to become part of the American dream. So most of your money, and you don't have them yet, someday you might, most of the money you owe in student loan you owe to the federal government. It's time for the federal government to stand up and help you and the next generation. Last point I'll make. For-profit universities are overwhelmingly phony. Overwhelmingly phony. And let me tell you why. I'll give you 2 numbers. This is going to be on the final. You might want to write this down. The 2 numbers. 9% of students graduating from high school go to for-profit colleges and universities. 9%. 34% of all the student loan defaults are students from for-profit colleges and universities. 9 and 34. Why? Because they charge so darn much. The students get burdened in debt and drop out, or if they finish, they end up with a worthless diploma. There's 600 Argosy University students now holding the bag because this operation went out of business after taking millions of dollars in subsidies from the federal government. It's an outrage that we let this happen and young people fall into this trap. So we need to do a better job regulating out in Washington when it comes to the kind of school that you might sign up for.
I promise I'll come back to you.
Congressman, one more.
Okay, and you get the last question.
Okay, well, I'm with Stop ETO in Lake County, ETO being ethylene oxide gas that is leaking into Lake County by 2 companies, Medline and Vantage Chemicals in Gurnee. Now, this chemical was being emitted by Sterigenics also, and Sterigenics was recently shut down by the EPA for emitting levels but remaining within the permitted levels. Recently, thank you very much, have Galowski joining us. Everybody is joining us and saying we need new regulation. We need more legislation because these permitted levels are not taking into consideration our communities. And they are causing extreme levels of cancer. They're causing chronic irritations like skin, headaches, stomach aches, and other gastrointestinal issues, many diseases. So all of these people are championing us, and we're so thrilled, and we want to say thank you so much that you guys are out there and you're listening to us. Who is not? Who is giving us the option? Where are we? Who are we fighting at this point? If we have all of these amazing representatives, thank you, fighting for us, where is the obstacle?
Thank you. Before I answer the question, because you pointed out that we've been joined by a couple more elected officials. Our state rep, Joyce Mason, stand up. Stand up again. He wants to take a picture. That's all. And Sheriff John Eidelberg was here. Did he leave? We lost the sheriff, but our new Lake County Sheriff John Eidelberg was here. I just want to recognize them. This issue, as we talked about last week, came to the news in November. I have been proud. Oh, Sheriff is here.
Welcome.
So, go ahead. Thank you. So, as you came to the news in November, the background of the story is in that December 2016, the EPA moved ethylene oxide from a possible carcinogen to a known carcinogen. They have not updated their regulations, so there's been no greater leader on this than Senator Durbin. He's joined with me, with Senator Duckworth, with my colleagues Congressman Foster, Lipinski, and Kasten. We've sent letters, we've done legislation, introduced legislation, saying that when there is a change like this, you can't wait 2.5 years. We need an immediate update of the regulations. Calling for ambient air monitoring so we can get the data. And I don't have anything new from last week, but where things stand right now is as of a week ago Friday, the Illinois EPA said they would not, I guess I do have a little bit of information, would not do ambient air testing. The communities of Park City, Gurnee, and Waukegan are discussing funding it for themselves. As I said last week, I can't explain why the IEPA refused. The first place to be able to make a decision is to get the information you need to make that decision. First question I always ask myself in anything I look at is what do you have to learn to know what you have to do? Ambient air testing is both of those pieces, and we should have that, and we'll keep pushing. I can't tell you, IEPA has been a block. We've had meetings in your office with Andrew Wheeler, and now he's sworn in. He is officially the EPA administrator, and we're going to keep pushing until we can get that information.
The only thing I'll add is that the decision that was made in Willowbrook by the Illinois EPA to close them down was a state decision, now being challenged in court. I had asked the U.S. EPA to get on the scene. The readings that are coming off the monitors are dramatic, 350 times higher than the safe level.
In Willowbrook?
In Willowbrook. And they were telling me it would be months before they could get someone out to take a look at it. That is unacceptable. A lot of people, and you'll hear it in political speeches, say, too much government regulation. When it comes to a deadly carcinogenic gas, for goodness sakes, individuals can't protect themselves. We need to have a government with scientists and engineers who can back it up with data, doing their job to protect us. And we ought to look ahead. If this ethylene oxide turns out to be a danger in Willowbrook, we ought to look to where it's being used in other places, like Lake County. And I'm glad you're doing that.
Especially since Willowbrook was within their permitted levels. But their readings, as of right now, all of the information that's being put out was up to 136,000 times higher than it was safe for the community. Safety-wise, they didn't take that into consideration. So legally, they were within their permitted levels, and so legally, Medline and Vantage Chemicals are within their permitted levels, but the community has not been taken into consideration.
But that's why the legislation says when you have a new EPA assessment, as we saw in 2016. We're now 2 years, 4 months past
So
that.
what you're
That's
saying
just not
is
acceptable.
Illinois EPA and the EPA are the biggest.
Well, here's what it boils down
obstacles
to.
at this point.
The companies are going to fight us in court no matter what.
Obviously.
Okay. The second thing is the U.S. EPA needs to develop a standard when it comes to the use of ethylene oxide as a sterilization tool, an agent. And we've been pushing it. Senator Duckworth and Congressman Schneider have been pushing it. Do it, do it, do it. And they're dragging their feet, as I said. Months from now, we may get to it. In addition to that, the Illinois EPA, from what I didn't know what you just said, is not monitoring the Lake County sites.
Okay, so a week ago Friday, they said, we're not going to do that.
Now, Willowbrook decided as a town to monitor as well.
And so that's what we've been doing. We've been going to city councils and we've been talking to the mayors and we've been pushing
You're doing the right thing.
from a residential standpoint, from the community standpoint, but there's only so much we can do. And as of last city council, Mayor Cunningham did step up and he said that they are going to start looking into, within the next 90 days, they're going to start looking into independent air testing. I want to know what's holding up the legislation. I know that you didn't have any more recent information. I'm following you
It's
very closely.
EPA rulemaking.
But it's EPA and Illinois EPA that are going to be
US.
our biggest obstacles.
US.
So thank you.
I just wanted to add a couple of things, and thank you so much for all you're doing. You know, I have 2 kids. I'm a mom. I live in Gurney too. So this is terrifying to me, and it is a top priority for me. One of the things, I did see that article that came out in the Tribune, and I wanted to clarify something because I jumped right on it when I saw it. The no that came from the Illinois EPA was in direct response to a question asked by Mayor Kovarik of Gurney in terms of she wanted to pay the Illinois EPA to do the testing, as on a contract basis. And the no was, no, that's not how it works. So that's not completely off the table yet, and we're continuing to push them to do the testing. But I think it's really important to know, because in that newspaper article, she came out and said, they said, no, they're not going to do the testing. But that wasn't exactly the conversation that happened. It was like, no, that's not how we do it. So there are other ways of getting them to test.
How do you suppose she's putting out this information?
I can't speak to that. But the other thing, is that Senator Melinda Bush and I did a joint resolution, and mine is still on its way to the House, to ask the federal EPA to come and do testing too. But we're continuing to work, and thank you both for everything.
And the only thing I guess I would add to that, it still doesn't, we need to have this ASAP. We are past the hour, so I apologize, and unfortunately we have to go to another event, another meeting. But again, thank you. We will continue to have these Congress on Your Corners throughout the year. Please continue to come.